The rain fell in sheets that gray November morning, turning the cemetery paths into rivers of mud. At the gates of Arlington National Cemetery, two young guards stood rigid in their dress uniforms, tasked with checking credentials for General Marcus Whitfield's funeral. The ceremony had drawn hundreds of military dignitaries, politicians, and decorated officers. Security was tight, the guest list exclusive. An old man approached the gates, his clothes worn and weathered, his shoes caked with mud. He wore no uniform, carried no invitation, possessed no identification that would grant him entry to such a prestigious event. His face was weathered like old leather, carved with deep lines that spoke of hard years and harder choices. When he asked to enter, his voice was quiet, almost apologetic. The guards exchanged glances. One of them, barely 23, stepped forward with practiced authority. "Sir, this is a private military ceremony. We need to see your credentials." The old man reached into his pocket with trembling hands, producing only a faded photograph, its edges soft from years of handling. "I need to be there," he said simply. "I owe him everything." The second guard, more impatient than his partner, shook his head firmly. "Sir, we have strict orders. No credentials, no entry. Please step aside." A 21-gun salute echoed across the grounds as the flag-draped casket was carried to its final resting place. The old man didn't argue or raise his voice. He simply stood there in the rain, water streaming down his face, mixing with what might have been tears. He clutched that photograph against his chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. The guards remained unmoved, their duty clear, their orders absolute. Then a convoy of black vehicles arrived. A 4-star general emerged, his chest heavy with medals, his presence commanding immediate attention. General Robert Hastings had served alongside Marcus Whitfield for 30 years, had known him as both soldier and friend. As he approached the gates, he noticed the commotion, the old man being turned away, the guards standing their ground. Something about the scene made him pause. Perhaps it was the way the old man stood, with quiet dignity despite his obvious poverty. Perhaps it was the photograph clutched in those weathered hands. General Hastings walked over, his stride purposeful. "What's happening here?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of command. The guard snapped to attention. "Sir, this man has no credentials. We're following protocol." General Hastings looked at the old man, really looked at him, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or intuition. "May I see that photograph?" he asked gently. The old man handed it over with reluctance, as if parting with something sacred. The general studied it carefully. The image showed two young soldiers barely out of their teens, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. One was clearly a young Marcus Whitfield. The other was the man standing before them now, 50 years older, but unmistakably the same person. General Hastings felt his throat tighten. He knew this story. Every officer who had served under Whitfield knew fragments of it, whispered in late-night conversations, though Marcus himself had rarely spoken of it. Vietnam, 1971. A patrol gone wrong, an ambush in the jungle. Private James Rourke, just 19 years old, had thrown himself over a grenade, saving his entire squad, including a young lieutenant named Marcus Whitfield. Everyone thought Rourke had died that day. The explosion had been catastrophic, the evacuation chaotic. But somehow, impossibly, he had survived, though barely. Months in a field hospital, years of recovery, a medical discharge that sent him home broken in body and mind. No family to claim him, no resources to rebuild his life. He had fallen through the cracks, as too many veterans do, lost to the system that should have caught him. "This man," General Hastings said, his voice thick with emotion, turning to the stunned guards, "saved General Whitfield's life. He's the reason Marcus Whitfield lived to become the leader we're honoring today. He's the reason dozens of missions succeeded, hundreds of soldiers came home safely. Everything the general accomplished, every life he touched, exists because of this man's sacrifice." The general handed back the photograph and placed his hand on the old man's shoulder. "You're not just entering this funeral," he said firmly. "You're sitting in the front row. You're receiving the honor you should have received 50 years ago." As they walked together through those gates, the ceremony paused. Officers stood as James Rourke took his place of honor. When the final salute was given, when taps played its mournful song, The old man wept openly. He had finally come home, finally received the recognition that had eluded him for half a century. Sometimes the greatest acts of heroism are forgotten by everyone except the one person who mattered most. And sometimes at the very end, the debts of honor are finally properly paid.